Hi, this is Kevin Pawlak with Prince William's Office of Historic Preservation. Thank you for joining us for our Second Manassas Campaign Anniversary Series. We'll be bringing to you several videos, both filmed and live, from different sites related to the Second Manassas Campaign, which took place in August of 1862. Currently this year, we'll be commemorating the 159th anniversary of the Second Manassas Campaign and the battle that corresponds to it, fought on August 28th to the 30th of 1862. We're here on August 22nd, 2021, the 159-year anniversary of a very famous Confederate raid that was staged against this location. I'm standing here at Catlett Station, as it was known at the time of the American Civil War, known today simply as Catlett, Virginia, and you can see some of the old tracks of the Orange and Alexandria Railroad here behind me, a rail line that figured prominently into the story of the Second Manassas Campaign. Before we bring the troops here to Catlett Station on August 22nd, 1862, though, just a little bit of backstory about the campaign itself. The Civil War had entered its second year in the summer of 1862, and the war was changing and growing dramatically from what people thought it would be when the war began in the spring of 1861. A new Union Army had just been created, folding three different commands, Union commands from Northern Virginia, into one army that became known as the Army of Virginia. It was commanded by a Westerner, General John Pope, who was brought east to take command of these disparate Union commands, and on June 26, 1862, the Army of Virginia, under Pope's command, was officially formed. The Army of Virginia was supposed to operate here in Northern Virginia, but it was also supposed to serve as a complementary force to the other major Union Army operating in Virginia at this time, and that was the Army of the Potomac under the command of General George B. McClellan. On June 26, 1862, the same exact day that the Army of Virginia was formed, George McClellan's Army of the Potomac was under attack at first Mechanicsville and then a series of battles fought outside of Richmond that we call today the 7 Days Battles or the 7 Days Campaigns. After 7 consecutive days of fighting, Robert E. Lee and the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia were able to drive McClellan's forces away from Richmond back to their base on the James River at a place called Harrison's Landing. Soon enough, by early August 1862, the Lincoln administration, President Abraham Lincoln, Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton, and General-in-Chief Henry Halleck decided that it would be best to pull McClellan's force off the Virginia Peninsula, move them by boat here to Northern Virginia to join with John Pope's Army of Virginia, and ultimately create an overwhelming Union force that would take the overland route between Washington, D.C. and Richmond to capture the Confederate capital in the summer of 1862. Robert E. Lee was well aware that time was operating against him, because the further he delayed and the more time that was spent between Lee's movement against the Army of the Potomac on the peninsula and Lee's movement against Pope's Army of Virginia here in Northern Virginia, Lee recognized that the strengths, the tips of the scales, the balances would be pushed against him in terms of the strength of the two forces itself. As those two Union armies gathered closer together, their numbers would increase while Lee's would stay relatively the same. And so Lee recognized that he had to act fast. Initially, the campaign began many miles off to our south along the Rappahannock River, and then ultimately Pope decided to pull back to the north bank of the Rappahannock River, several miles behind me, where he would stage his defensive line. And during the mid-August period, Pope was constantly sparring with Lee across the Rappahannock River while Lee was trying to get forces of his across the Rappahannock River and drive Pope away from the northern bank of the Rappahannock. Pope was constantly parrying Lee's thrusts across the river, and Lee was looking for a solution to break the stalemate along the Rappahannock. The solution came in the form of his cavalry officer, by the name of J.E.B. Stuart. Stuart suggested on a raid around the right end or the northern end of Pope's line, crossing the Rappahannock River and attacking Pope's supply depot here at Catlett Station on the night of August 22nd, 1862, 159 years ago, this evening. Stuart gathered 1,500 of his cavalrymen. They crossed the Rappahannock at Waterloo Bridge, made their way into downtown Warrenton by the afternoon of August 22nd, to where they were greeted enthusiastically by the civilians of Warrenton, marching and riding in a driving rainstorm. Stuart's men then approached here, Catlett Station, at about 7:30 p.m. on the evening of August 22nd. For a time, the rain stopped, while Stuart and his men were able to look about the Union camp and scout out and prepare their attack. What Stuart realized is that the Federal garrison here guarding the supply wagons of the Army of Virginia here at Catlett Station. They were very much unprepared for an attack. And so Stuart staged most of his force to attack the Union garrison here at Catlett Station, but then also dispatched the 4th Virginia Cavalry to burn the bridge carrying the Orange and Alexandria Railroad over Cedar Run, a little bit behind me. The bridge still, or portions of the bridge, the original bridge abutments, still stand today that you can see just off of Route 28. As Stuart and his men staged their attack, that rainstorm commenced once again, thunder and lightning as well, and Stuart's men were very quickly able to drive off the federal troops here, capture a lot of the federal troops here, and capture some of the federal supply wagons as well. One of the wagons that they captured even carried some important dispatches between John Pope and his superior officers in Washington, D.C., and they even managed to capture one of John Pope's dress coats, which was soon sent back down to Richmond and put on display in one of the storefronts in the Confederate capital. While Stuart did have great success with this raid on Catlett Station, ultimately the main goal of his raid, the main objective, was not accomplished, and that was burning the bridge that carried the Orange and Alexandria Railroad over Cedar Run itself. Because it was too wet, there was too much rain that night, the 4th Virginia Cavalry was unable to burn the bridge. But nonetheless, Stuart gained valuable intelligence about the federal dispositions, about the federal plans, and he would soon pass those along to his commanding general, Robert E. Lee, and with those plans, Lee would soon hatch on a very bold and daring plan to finally break the stalemate along the Rappahannock River. Continue to follow our YouTube channel and our Facebook page for more of our live, in-time episodes related to the Second Manassas Campaign's 159th anniversary.